Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Tira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Tira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Tira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari 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 Kunja Bihari. Thank you, Balaram. Jayam Vishnu Pad Paramhamsa Pravikacharya Ashtotar Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnu Pad Paramhamsa Pravikacharya Ashtotar Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Charya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Prem Se Koho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jai Murdayet Nasta Prayabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we'll be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 1, Text 51. Tad, Etat, Shodasha, Kalam, Lingam, Shakti Trayam, Mahat, Date, Nusam Shritim, Pumse, Harshashoka, Bayartidam, Tad Eta Chudashaka Kalam, Lingam Shakti Trayam Mahat, Dati Nusam Smritim Pumsi, Harshashoka Bayartidam, Tad Eta Chudashakalam, Lingam Shakti Trayam Mahat, Dati Nusam Smritim Pumsi, Harshashoka Bayartidam, Tad Etat Shodashakalam, Lingam Shakti Trayam Mahat, Dati Nusam Smritim Pumsi, Harshashoka Bayartidam, Lingam Shakti Trayam Mahat, Dati Nusam Smritim Pumsi, Trayam Mahat, Dati Sum Supreme Pumsi, Harshashoka Bayartidam, Ataji, do you want to try? Tadeta Shoda Shakalam, Titrayam Mahat, Dati Nusam Smritim Pumsi, Harshashoka Bayartidam. Anyone from Zoom? Okay. Synonyms. Tat, therefore. Etat, this. Shodakalam, made of 16 parts, namely the 10 senses, the mind and the 5 sense objects. Lingam, the subtle body. Shakti Trayam, the effect of the 3 modes of material nature. Mahat, insurmountable. Dati, gives. Anusamshritim, almost perpetual rotation and transmigration in different types of bodies. Pumsi, unto the living entity. Harsha, jubilation. Shoka, lamentation. Bhaya, fear. Arti, misery. Dham, which gives. Translation. The subtle body is endowed with 16 parts. The 5 knowledge-acquiring senses, the 5 working senses, the 5 objects of sense gratification, and the mind. The subtle body is an effect of the 3 modes of material nature. It is composed of insurmountably strong desires, and therefore it causes the living entity to transmigrate from one body to another in human life, animal life, and life as a demigod. When the living entity gets the body of a demigod, he is certainly very jubilant. When he gets a human body, he is always in lamentation. And when he gets the body of an animal, he is always afraid. In all conditions, however, he is actually miserable. His miserable condition is called samsriti, or transmigration in material life. Purport. The sum and substance of material conditional life is explained in this verse. The living entity, the 17th element, is struggling alone, life after life. This struggle is called samsriti, or material conditional life. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the force of material nature is insurmountably strong. Daivi hishagunamayi mama maya duratyaya. Material nature harasses the living entity in different bodies, but if the living entity surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he becomes free from this entanglement, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. Thus his life becomes successful. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shlakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaisnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Taptat Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sundibhye Vacha Patitanam Pavinebhyo Vaishnabhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam pangam langayate girim yatki patamaham vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. Hare Krishna. So, the demigods, their life are characterized by enjoyment, and human beings are characteristics is lamentation and hankering. And the animals, their life is characterized by fear. And you can see that. Demigods, they have a very opulent lifestyle. Their enjoyment is compared to hundreds and thousands more enjoyable than here on earth. And then the human beings, we have a tendency to want. And then when we lose it, we lament. And animals, they're always in fear. They're simply just eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And speaking of lamentation, there was a TV show called Hoarders. And it was called The Hoarders. Yeah. It was a TV show. And what they would do is they would go to people's homes and they would see what type of lifestyle they would have. People would have food that is like 10, 5, 15 years. Is this order still? I'm not sure. How many years ago? Like 5? I think so, or even 7. Probably still around, man. Maybe. And these people's homes, they have cat food that if you want, Balram. So they have cat food that is still in the refrigerator, even though it's expired 15 years ago. And there was even an episode where it was just so much junk that the people that were coming to haul the stuff away, they couldn't enter the house because of the bad smell. And the lady said, I have a cat somewhere. And when they checked, the cat was already dead. It was under all of these rubble and pile of junk. And when you tell these people, we need to get rid of these stuff, they actually get mad. They get angry. They said, I'm going to use this one day. And this reminds me of on Tuesday, Bhakti Tyler and I, we were doing some projects cleaning up around the ashram and the temple room and the laundry room and the Krishna lounge. And we were getting rid of a lot of stuff or junk. And in the mind, we were always thinking, maybe we need this, But it's been sitting there for like weeks, months. So we said, just throw it out. And, Bhakti Tyler, I really have to glorify him because all he does is just service. And sometimes he might even neglect his sleep just to serve the devotees. So Bhakti Tyler, thank you. And animals, they're always fearing. Like Dravida Prabhu, he always mentions that a bird, he'll take a grain and then he'll keep looking. He'll take another grain, he'll keep looking. Yeah. So they're afraid that another bird will attack them or eat them. And in the purport mentioned there are 16 parts. The 5 knowledge acquiring senses, the 5 working senses, and the 5 objects of sense gratification. And then the 16th element is the mind. So the 5 knowledge acquiring senses are the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and the hand. And the 5 working senses are the hand, leg, stomach, rectum, and genital. And the 5 sense objects are the eyes, they see form, the tongue, they taste, the ears, they hear sound, and then the hand touches, and then the nose, they smell. But the mind is the 16th. And Balaram Prabhu, his verse yesterday, what was the 17th element? The soul, the living entity. And so these are the ways we acquire knowledge, but Srila Prabhupada, he would always emphasize that our senses are limited or imperfect. And Srila Prabhupada, he used the example of a mango. Mango might look really nice, right? You may even squeeze it and it's soft and it's ready, but it's still imperfect because you haven't tasted it. So the senses, they may work together to acquire knowledge, but they're still imperfect because they depend on the super soul. And Srila Prabhupada, he also says in the purport that the living entity is struggling alone, life after life. So a man is bound up, but how can he be released if he's tied up? All of us who are being bound up by the mind, the senses, the threefold miseries, material nature. People are misleading us. There's so many different ways that we're bound up, attachments. And then Daivi Ishaguna Mai Mama Maya Duratyaya. That the material nature is very difficult to overcome. It's basically impossible. And the way to be free, to get free, is if someone who is free himself can help us, can untie us. So this is Krishna and the spiritual master. And prisoners, they have a little freedom, right? They're stuck in their cell. And if they do good time, or if they're performing their duties nicely, they're given a little bit more freedom. Then they can help make bread, they can help in the kitchen. And then if you're really good, you're able to walk outside the premises, you can lift weights, you can play basketball, things like that. But even though he has these so-called freedom, he's still bound up in the prison house. So similarly, the living entity, we may have small independence, but we're still bound up to birth, death, disease, and old age. So how can we break free? Mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. If the living entity surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he becomes free from this entanglement. So what is this surrender? You know, on book distribution, when people ask me, what's the purpose of life? And sometimes I give different answers, but when I tell them to surrender to God, they see surrender as a bad thing. You know, they say, what do you mean surrender? I'm my own boss, right? And surrender doesn't mean only if I feel like it, right? If someone asks you to do service, you should be willing to. In the Nectar of Devotion, Srila Rupa Goswami, he points out that devotional service is awarded to us. And Krishna, he can award liberation, but his devotional service, to be engaged in devotional service, is very difficult. So, depending on the degree of our surrender, that determines our freedom. Srila Prabhupada, he would say, he told the story of freedom. There was Alexander the Great. He arrested a thief. Do you guys know this story? He arrested this thief, Alexander the Great. So the thief asked Alexander the Great, "Sir, you're going to punish me, but I'm a small thief. You're a great thief." You know? So he said, "How?" He said, "I take, a little here and there, but you're conquering countries, you're taking over other people's thrones by power, so you're a greater thief," like that. So when Alexander the Great, when he heard this, he said, "You're right, I'm no better than you. I'm not much different than you." So he released the thief. And the devotees, sometimes they're criticized. You have to wake up early, you have to chant your rounds, you have to do service. But that service is actually freedom. And you can see this everywhere you go. People's minds, they're being pulled. In Balboa Park, you see that a lot. It's very prominent. They're pointing at the map. "Oh, I want to go here. I want to check out the old globe. I want to check out the theater. I want to see if there's a new menu on the restaurant." So they're actually being pulled by the mind. But the devotees, when we serve Krishna, that's actual freedom because that's our constitutional position. Jivera Swarup Hoy Krishnera Nityadas. That the living entity, we're constitutional, we're eternal servants of Krishna. So the servant is meant to serve the master, just like the servant of a king. If he knows his position, he can enjoy the same facilities as the king. He can eat with the king, he can travel with the king because that's his position. But if that servant decides, "I want to be king," then he gets in trouble. Because the servant, that's not his position. He doesn't know how to govern the kingdom. He doesn't know how to apply taxes. He doesn't know how to do managerial or kshatriya duties. So when we wake up in the morning, when we follow the regulative principles, when we chant our rounds, when we serve, that's actually our position. We should keep that in mind. And at Balboa Park a few days ago, they had some type of dog convention. People that were owning wiener dogs or dachshunds, whatever they're called, they had like a whole parade of them. They would dress them up. And Srila Prabhupada, he said, "We worship God, but in your country, you're worshipping dog."
How many dogs? Hundreds?
Maybe hundreds. Do you remember seeing that?
I didn't see many, but I saw some being dressed up.
No, there was a lot. There was a lot. And people would say, "Oh, how cute," So they're admiring their masters, right? I have a German Shepherd, I have a Chihuahua. And another so-called holiday is coming up. What is that holiday for the materialists? Halloween. Halloween. They're already in Maya thinking I'm the body, but they're dressing up the body again with another dress, A pirate, superhero, ghost. Hare Krishna. I went to visit my brother and we saw this video. He was wearing orange, but he wasn't wearing a dhoti and kurta. What other person wears orange? prisoner. So my brother said, why don't you dress up like a prisoner, And it made me think, we are in prison. And so this is Kali Yuga. And Kali Yuga means manda. And Srila Prabhupada, he would say manda can be defined as slow or bad. Prayeno payushaha sabya kalavasmin yugejana manda sumanda matayo manda bhagya hi upadritaha. When the sages were seeing the conditions in Kali Yuga, this is what they concluded. In this iron age of Kali, men almost always have but short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. So they're not interested in spiritual knowledge. His Grace, Vijay Prabhu, he always says book distribution is very purifying. You get a lot of no's. So at the same time, you have to kind of work a little bit harder and you have to surrender. Please, Krishna, help me send some nice souls to my table. An example is given. People have more knowledge of mundane than knowing about the soul. There was a family here, and my spiritual master, His Holiness Badrinarayan Swami Maharaj, he asked them, can you say Jagannath Puri to the little kid? And they were from India. They were actually from Jagannath Puri. And the little kid, he couldn't say Jagannath. But then Maharaj said, oh, but I bet you know Mickey Mouse. So they have more knowledge of, Mickey Mouse, Superman, Batman, but to understand who they are, they have no idea. And I'll tell a few Sankirtan stories. You don't know who you're going to meet on book distribution, and you don't know what type of, what they'll say also. I was distributing books to one person, and this Mataji, she walked by my table. And she said, she looked at the books, and she came back, and she pointed at Science of Self-Realization. And she said, that book saved my life. So after I gave another book to this other man, she came over and she said, this book changed my life. And I asked her, how did you get it? And a lot of these people, they don't remember how they got the books. Maybe they got it as a gift, maybe they got it a long time ago. So I asked her, how did this book change your life? And she said, first I changed my diet. She became vegetarian. And then she said, my consciousness. She said, I learned to be grateful in life, and she understood karma. Whatever's happening in our life, it's due to our, you can say, past activities. And she brought over her son, and the son, he looked very confused, kind of lost. And so when I was describing the other books that we had, she called the son over, hey, come here, you need to hear this. And so I was telling her the books that we had, and she gave a donation, and she took a set, and she also got a Krishna book. I said, you should read this Krishna book next. I told her it's full of adventure. There's villains, there's romance, there's supernatural activities. And I told her then you're going to be able to understand the Bhagavad Gita. And I was distributing near Old Globe Theater in Balboa Park. And I met this Mataji. She stopped by my table and she said, oh, the Bhagavad Gita, I've always wanted to read it. And so I said, now's your chance. So she took a Bhagavad Gita. So I was showing her this is as it is. It has a Sanskrit. It breaks it down word for word in a translation and in a purport by someone who's practicing the philosophy, the tradition. And then as she took the book and she gave a donation, she said, can I show you something? So she pulled out her phone and it had a list of all the books she wanted to read. And Bhagavad Gita was there. Is that amazing? People, they hear about the Bhagavad Gita and they want to get a copy. So when we go out and distribute books, we are fulfilling that desire. We're instruments for Srila Prabhupada. And there was another family. They looked a little rough from the outside. And when I was telling them the books, how it can calm the mind, you can, you learn to live more simple. It helps you to conquer anger, things like that. And so the family, after they took a book and they gave a donation, the father, he said, "Thank you. We really needed to hear that." Because everyone's chasing, lamenting, and hankering. Everyone's chasing some type of better economic development, like what Srila Prabhupada says. But when you tell them you don't need a lot to be happy, this is what they want to hear. And Socrates, he says, contentment is natural wealth and luxury is artificial poverty. To be content in life means to understand that we're given what we are supposed to receive instead of chasing and chasing and chasing for so-called better improved lifestyle. And luxury is artificial poverty. I heard this in the class. Some people are so poor, all they have is money. And when I see people at the park and they look like they're very rich and wealthy, I tell them that. Some people are so poor, all they have is money, and it makes them reflect. That's true. That's all I have. But money is not. It doesn't equate happiness. And on book distribution, I asked this question: what has more value, wealth or having peace of mind? And everyone will say peace of mind. And I ask them, can you defend that? So they'll tell me that having a peaceful mind is actually more valuable than wealth. Because wealth, it brings so much unnecessary anxiety. They're always worrying, how can I secure my money? How can I make more money? And how can I enjoy my money? And they, at the back of their mind, they know that when I leave this body, this money has to go to my relatives or even to someone I don't like. So they're always in anxiety. And one book that I like to distribute, also a small book or a medium book, is His Holiness Devamrita Swami Maharaj's book called Hiding in Unnatural Happiness. Even the title itself is very catchy. And then I turn to the 16th page, and then I make them read Robin Williams' quote. Robin Williams, he says, "Isn't it funny how I can bring great happiness to all these people, but not to myself?" Right? He had wealth, he had fame, he had followers, he was very entertaining, everyone loved him, but there was a hole in his heart, and he took his own life. So when people read that, they naturally become a little bit more introspective, or they can start thinking about, what is actual happiness. And that also talks about consumerism. The more I have, the newer things I have, I will be happy. But Prabhupada would call this an illusion or a hallucination, Maya. It's not real. Because money is an intoxicant, and people like to indulge in intoxication sometimes. And one of these subtle forms of intoxication is wealth, having money. Srila Prabhupada, he also tells this story because we're talking about having faith. There was a cobbler and there was a Brahmana. So Narada Muni, he approached the Brahmana, and the Brahman asked him, "Oh, are you going to go see the Lord? Can you ask him, when is my salvation?" So he said, "Okay, I'll do that." So he went to the cobbler, and he was mending some shoes. And so the cobbler, he also asked Narada Muni, "When you go to Vaikuntha, can you ask the Lord, when is my salvation?" So when Narada Muni went to Vaikuntha, he saw Lord Narayan. And so Lord Narayan, he told Narada Muni that you tell the Brahmin that he'll be delivered after many lives. But the cobbler, once he leaves his body, he comes to me. So Narada Muni was a little perplexed. He was confused. Why is the Brahmin taking repeated birth, and why is this cobbler, what's it called, freedom or liberation from birth and death? So Lord Narayan told Narada Muni, when you go back, they're going to ask, what is he doing? Krishna, what is he doing? So Krishna told Narada Muni, that putting an elephant through the eye of a needle. No big needle, a big elephant. So he came back. So he told the cobbler, you're going to be liberated after this life. And so he was very joyful. And then when he went to the Brahmin, he said, you're going to have to take a few more births. So he said, how can I understand this, right? So they asked him, well, what is Lord Narayan doing in Vaikuntha? So Narada Muni told him he's threading an elephant through the eye of a needle. So the Brahmana, he said, no, that's impossible. So Narada Muni could understand he didn't have faith in Krishna. He was just a reader of books, what Prabhupada would describe. But the cobbler, when he told him that he's stringing an elephant through the eye of a needle, he began to weep. He said, just see how wonderful my Lord is. And so Narada Muni asked him, you believe this? And he said, of course. And so he narrated that I'm sitting under this banyan tree. And this banyan tree is dropping so many fruits. And within each fruit, there's a seed. And in each seed has a potential of growing a big banyan tree. And so he said, so it's not very hard to believe if Lord Narayan can string an elephant through the eye of a needle, he can do it. So he understood that the cobbler, he actually had more faith in Krishna than the Brahmana. I met another family, the man and a wife, and the wife was pregnant. So when I was telling them about materialistic living, the man, he admitted, I'm like that. I'm always chasing after the newest car, the newest cell phone. I want to get a better job, bigger house. So, but he also said, I've been searching for spiritual knowledge. So I told him he came to the right table. So I was showing him the Bhagavad Gita, SSR, and Hiding in Unnatural Happiness. And so he asked me, which book should I read first? So I asked him, if I asked you, who are you? How would you answer that? He said, I don't know. So I said, I would recommend reading Science of Self-Realization first, and then reading the Bhagavad Gita. And while his wife went to the restroom, she said, thank you. He was very apologetic because he was saying, my wife, I know she doesn't want this material lifestyle, but it's only me, So I said, why are you chasing after this? And then he told me, this is all I know. Strive for, newer things, economic development. So I told him, you read this first, and then you'll become a spiritually enlightened person. And then he asked me, after reading this book, will I give up my family? I told him, no, it's the opposite. You'll become a great dad, a great father. So he said, really? And I said, yeah. So I told him, you should take this book, Science of Self-Realization, and then when you're ready, you can take Bhagavad Gita. Because he was working at the stock market or, stock or whatever. And so he said, I don't have a lot of time. So I said, just read this book then, Science of Self-Realization. So he took the book, he shook my hand, he gave a donation, and then walked away. And as he was walking away, he said, see, I knew there was a purpose for me coming here. Because, when you speak about spiritual life, spiritual happiness and inner peace, people want to relate to that. They're looking for that. Srila Prabhupada, he also tells the story of a hunter. This hunter threw a net and he caught the children birds, the birds, the chicklets or whatever they're called. And so the mother saw the children captured. So the mother ran after and she also got caught. So the father bird said, if I try to save them, I'll also be caught. So Prabhupada said, better I leave, it takes sannyas. So Srila Prabhupada, he says, this is intelligence. You cannot give protection to your family, your friends, society. They must die. You cannot save them. And then Prabhupada, he said, if you want to save them, then make them Krishna consciousness. This is real contraceptive method. Isn't that nice? Real contraceptive method. Because everyone's thinking, I'm going to be able to save my wife, my kids from death. But they know they can't do that. So we just chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I want to conclude by asking a few questions. What would life be like without the holy name? What if we were prevented from chanting? How would you feel? Horrible. I was distributing books, and I just took my beads and I started chanting. And somehow Krishna gave me a little bit of mercy, and I was just feeling the sweetness of the holy names. And then so it made me think of this question: what would life be like without the holy name? And naturally the devotees, they would say, I would feel bad, I wouldn't feel good. So that tells me that naturally we love to chant. Deep down, all of us, we really love to chant. And when you chant properly, you love it. And you would love the effects of chanting. Chanting calms the mind, it clears the mind. We're becoming connected to Krishna through His holy name. And so it's not very difficult to chant. A lot of devotees, they have a hard time chanting. They have a hard time chanting nicely, pronouncing the holy names. But when you get a taste for chanting, it's very blissful. There's so many verses and shlokas about the nectar of the holy name. So I was reflecting, there's a affirmation. It says, I want to chant, I get to chant, and I love to chant. And when we chant this, or when we repeat it before we chant, it changes our consciousness. So we should keep this in mind. Hare Nama eva kevalam, Klau nasteva gatiranyata. In this age of Kali, the only means of deliverance is the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. There is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way. So we should chant nicely, and we should remember that we're getting an opportunity to serve Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual master, Krishna, and all the Vaishnavas. Okay, I think I'll end there. Any questions, comments, corrections, chastisement? Yes, Trivedi.
Remember that our final breath may come at any time, no matter if we're old and sick or in our youthful prime. So young and old should chant the holy name incessantly. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be.
Thank you, Trivedi. When I meet young people, I tell them, you don't know when you're going to take your last breath. Because sometimes when people approach the table, they're very puffed up. So I like to kind of tell them a nice reminder, you're not immortal, and you may try to enjoy life, but you don't know when that enjoyment will end. Yes, Balaram Prabhu.
Yeah, you're mentioning how you met this girl, and she was saying how, the book changed your life. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because so many books are going out, and of course it's very nice to hear such person's experience. It changed my life. Mm-hmm. But, so many books are going out, and we don't know whose lives they're changing, because it's not that their life cannot change unless they come to the temple. Like with this girl, obviously, it seems that she didn't come. She just come to the temple. She read the book, and on that basis, she changed her diet and was understanding things. But I remember. Years ago, I would go to Mesa College, and the teacher would invite me there to give a talk. And, because of lockdown, things change. And anyways, eventually she said she was going to start teaching in-person classes again. I contacted her recently. Anyways, but the interesting thing that she would do is I would go there, I'd give a talk, and on the Bhagavad Gita to all the students. And what she would do is, when I would leave, she would tell all the students, okay, now write your experience, like what you understood, how, because we would have a little kirtan too. So we'd have kirtan, I would bring, with another devotee, we have kirtan, and then I would give a class. She says, write your experience, how you feel and what happened. So, but she wouldn't tell any of the students that I was going to read it. And she would give me like a packet, which was really fun actually. She'd give me a packet of students' responses, and I would hear them, and some people say, oh yeah, I didn't like what he said, and that was like really kind of, that doesn't make sense, and things like that. Because people are speaking openly because they don't know I'm going to read it. And some people are just very basic. They just kind of wrote some basic thing. But some people, I was surprised. Like, yeah, the chanting. I was just chant. I was in my head for the rest of the day. The Hare Krishna, and I was driving home. And one girl, I remember, she said that in this packet. She said that, I got the Higher Taste, the book, from him, and then I read it, and she said I started cooking from it at my home, and then while I was cooking, I was playing the Maha Mantra, chanting, and I was like, well, it's quite interesting. Anyways, she showed up at the lounge. She didn't keep on coming by, but so you have a bunch of cases like that, we don't know exactly. And then I remember this devotee, he was here years ago before he moved to Mayapur, Jagannath Tirtha. Yeah, you know him, right? You know Jagannath Tirtha? No. Oh, really? I didn't know it was so long ago. But anyways, Jagannath Tirtha, his friend got a Bhagavad Gita at Grossmont College, 30 minutes east. And then his friend, looked at the Bhagavad Gita, and his friend gave the Bhagavad Gita to I forgot what his name was before, but Jagannath Tirtha, whatever his name was before. And then he started reading it, and he read it, and then somehow or other he read the whole Bhagavatam. Before he came to the temple, he read the whole Bhagavatam. And then he came to the temple, and I met him here, because I saw him right when he came in, and we started talking. It was dinner time, so we were having prasadam, and he was telling me, I read the whole Srimad Bhagavatam, and it was just amazing. So anyways, he kept on coming by, and then he lived out in La Mesa, so I told him you could go to Mahabharat's house. They have some program there. And so he was going there. And then, he became a devotee. And he got married to another devotee. And then he moved to Mayapur, and now he's helping with a TOVP. He's doing some, whatever it is. He's an artist doing some graphic stuff. So, anyways.
Thank you, Balaram.
And the fourth thing I remember about him, that he was the one who established soaking time for the apricots. He worked it out. It was just like, this. I go in just at that time, it goes to 6 o'clock, and they turn out just right. He was doing that for months.
Thank you. Whenever I travel with Maharaj, whoever picks us up, he would ask, how did you hear about the devotees? And I love hearing, how they came in contact with the books or the devotees. But our Bhakta Darius, he has an interesting story too. He had a roommate, and he would be chanting and reading the Bhagavad Gita. And so, Darius, he would say, why are you reading, a book like that? He thought it was about medieval times. He saw the chariot, so he said, why are you reading about that? So somehow or other, he got the Bhagavad Gita, and when he read it, he loved it. He started coming to the temple, and then he got a Srimad Bhagavatam. Do you know what canto he's in now? I think he's already in 10th canto, or Bhakta Darius. So hearing the devotees, how they came to Krishna consciousness, it's so nice. Okay. Anyone else?
Thank you, Prabhu, for a nice class. You mentioned something that was striking, that some people are so poor, all they have is money.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to tie that in with something that came up yesterday about a moment's association with a sadhu can lead one to the path of perfection. Bhattacharya Narayan Swami and I both come from wealthy families in Orange County. And one time I was sitting at a garden party with one of the wealthiest men in the world. He owns real estate all over the place. He was just told me about a boat trip he takes every year to the Cannes Film Festival. And I realized near the end of his narration, it was not only his 100-foot yacht, fully staffed with cooks and cleaners and captains and everything. And I said something about the Bhagavad Gita, just the two of us. At one point he hung his head and said, you know, you have something that makes me feel very poor. I said, what is that? He said, faith. He said, I have so much money, but I have no faith, and so I'm miserable. And you think about these people that are spending $100 for a haircut, $3,000 for suits, they're doing everything they think to be happy. And they see a devotee who's blissful just by distributing books, or what to speak of shaven-headed devotees chanting with nothing but khadi cloth on, and they look blissful. That sticks in their head. It does something profound. It ruins their own faith in their own system of happiness. And if fortune smiles on them, they become inquisitive. And those are one of the 4 types of pious people who can begin rendering service. The inquisitive. Sometimes they will become really fortunate and actually become interested in getting more knowledge about the absolute truth. But so just going out and performing your devotional activities is giving those people a chance to take the first step, losing faith in their process of material happiness. And before you know it, they're going to come and become inquisitive and want to read the books. So thank you very much for your lovely service and nice class.
Thank you so much. This reminds me, I was getting an oil change, and I was sitting next to this lady. She had a whole cheetah outfit, or I don't know, cheetah, you know, like animal print. And then I didn't want to talk to her, and she said, "What are you doing here?" You know, and I told her, "Oh, I'm getting an oil change." I didn't even ask her about her life, and she started saying, "Oh, you know, I have 3 properties, and you know, I'm gonna sell this car to get another brand new luxury car." And I was just, "Oh, that's nice." You know, she was expecting me to be impressed, you know. And I was just chanting japa, and she said, "What are you doing?" And so I'm chanting on these beads, you know. So she was more inquisitive about what I was doing than her own life. So yeah, you know, devotees, we're not supposed to be impressed by opulence and especially materialistic people. So yeah, thank you for your contribution, Maitreya Prabhu. Anyone else? Okay. For those that near live the temple, Kanai Balai is cooking his famous Saturday breakfast. So if you're nearby, come by. Okay. Grant Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.